Slept on Cinema is sponsored by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know someone who's struggling with shoe tying for any reason, Training Ties is the perfect solution.
Scooby Doo makes Stuart Little seem like Citizen Kane in comparison.
Too scary for most kids, too dumb for most teens.
Far more dull and just plain dumb than it ever is funny.
Is this really the sort of entertainment America wants?
Yep, it's every bit as awful as it looks in the preview.
This is the kind of woeful trash heap where you have to say that the best thing about it is Matthew Lillard.
I found no laughs, no smiles, no thrills, no atmosphere, no emotion, and worst of all, no sense of wonderment.
Not only eviscerates the spirit of the shows, it stomps on it for good measure.
Welcome to this week's episode of Slept on Cinema. I'm your host, StanSteamer.
And I'm GrobeStreet.
And this week, we are diving into our second intern's pick. It is the 2002, I don't even know how to describe this movie, so I'm just going to say a 2002 amazing film, Scooby Doo.
Yeah, there's no reason to explain Scooby Doo. It's just a live-action version of Scooby Doo, but it's Scooby Doo.
The film needs no introduction, I would say that.
It did for us.
This is probably the first. Neither of us had seen this movie ever.
Nope.
And I'm so glad that Kai recommended this because I had a blast.
Yeah, that was the first time through it. I was like, I'm surprised hearing like it's better than it looked because I didn't see it when the previews came out in like 2002. It just looked a little off. But by the second time, I'm like, this is now going to be a rewatchable movie for me and my kid.
Totally, I had the exact same experience. Where at first I was like, whoa, what did I get myself into
we
here?
We texted each other like, this could be different than most of the movies we've done.
Yep, but it really grew on me. I'm like kind of shocked at how much it grew on me.
Yeah, and it's just by the end you're just like smiling and you're getting a nostalgia drip, and it's great.
Yeah, it's shocking to say this for a movie like this, but the more I thought about it, the more I liked it.
Yeah. It should not be the case with these type of simple movies.
Right. No one, if somebody else who hadn't seen the movie, if I said that, they'd be like, "Are you insane?
Yeah, you wasted your brain power on Scooby Doo and overthinking it to make it better." Yeah, that's
yeah. So I'm very curious to hear the rotten premise.
Rotten premise. Zoinks! 2 years after a clash of egos forced Mystery Inc. to close its doors, Scooby Doo and his clever crime-solving cohorts, Fred, Daphne, Shaggy, and Velma, are individually summoned to Spooky Island to investigate a series of paranormal incidents at the ultra-hip spring break hotspot. Critics gave this a 32% score and audience slightly higher at 39%.
Wow. And in my excitement, I forgot to give our little intro here. So clearly this fits within the metric for our podcast. All movies we review here are at or below 50% on Rotten Tomatoes for both critics and audiences. And we set the podcast up such that the first half is spoiler free. We talk about some things to look for in the movie, some background, take a break, go watch the film, and come back and talk about what we just watched. I guess I'm not shocked at the ratings on this, in part because I think it gets better every time you watch it. And probably there's not a lot of people who watched it and I don't know if it wasn't what they were expecting or wasn't what they thought they were going to get or whatever gripe they had with it, and then just gave up on it.
Yep.
So I think if a lot of those people gave it another watch and maybe opened themselves up a little bit, these numbers should be far higher.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I can't wait to hear about some info about this movie.
So came out June 14th, 2002, opened number one. So
as always for our
back at it with a blockbuster, took in $54 million its opening weekend. And not only that, it beat out The Bourne Identity, which also opened that same weekend.
That's
and that movie's an all-timer with, huge movie star. I mean, Matt Damon at that point is, I don't know, about to be the biggest movie star in the world. So amazing opening weekend. It was actually, its June haul was the biggest June movie opening of all time at that point. It broke the records for June movies. Overall made $275 million on an $84 million budget. So this movie, despite whatever reviews, maybe people just didn't want to be honest about it, this movie crushed. And my guess is that a lot of those were repeat views.
Oh, absolutely. I also found another stat. If we're done with if you're finished with box office stats, it is the number one box office dog movie ever made.
Oh, wow.
I think that's domestic. Did it make the number I have is 153 million. I don't know if that's
domestic. Probably domestic, and it was 275 worldwide.
Next one being Marley and Me, and then 101 Dalmatians. But I also believe Scooby Doo 2 came in number 6 on this. So big dog movie.
That's wild. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. Obviously based on the original cartoon. The original cartoon, I hadn't realized exactly how long this had gone for. It has run more or less continuously in different forms since 1969.
Whoa.
And that is some staying power. Unbelievable. And initially, I guess Scooby-Doo was actually going to be a sheepdog. But when they were sort of shopping the idea around, the comic Marmaduke was a thing at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And someone was like, hey, this is too similar to Marmaduke, so let's make it a Great Dane. And the rest is history.
It was a great move.
So you can really thank Marmaduke for some of the greatness of Scooby-Doo. And I think the interesting thing about this particular adaptation is that it was written by James Gunn, who at the time was, I think, probably not that well known, but he would go on later, I think as probably everyone knows, to write and direct all the Guardian of the Galaxy movies. And you can really see in this film the sort of start of his like voice and his flavor and his style of crafting a movie. He's now co-chairman and co-CEO of DC Studios. Like he has basically made it to the top for his profession here. And this was sort of him on the upswing, which is another interesting wrinkle.
He injects heart pretty well, as he does to like a comic book movie with Guardians of the Galaxy. Like there's still heart involved there. And I thought he did a great job of that in this as well.
Yeah, I think he adds a lot more layers. There's heart. There's a lot more conflict. There's a lot more depth to the characters than probably the original source material has, or at least that it has on its surface. And he brings that out in really great ways. And I think originally this project was going to have a PG-13 or even an R rating. I think when they signed up the cast, that was the intention. The studio kind of jumped in towards the end and was like, actually, we think this is going to make more money as a kids PG movie. But you still, I don't think it's giving it away. You still get you get some of that feeling. There's parts of the original feel for this. Some of the sort of stoner jokes and references, they're deft at how they weave that in.
There's even some sex jokes in there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot there, and especially if you're an adult watching, you'll pick up on it. But they do also sort of weave it into ways that make it also PG. Apparently, there is a R-rated cut lurking out there. I know there are a number of deleted scenes. I don't know if you saw those. If you haven't, highly recommend catching up on those because they are some of them are a little, not necessarily racier, but like clearly targeted at more of an adult audience, and it's worth a watch. They even had shot some of this before they decided to make a full PG switch, and they had to CGI some more clothing onto some of the spring break attendees.
CGI clothing.
So apparently there's a cut out there that has yet to be made public, but that has the original clothing, the original edits, and I would love to see it.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to go check out those deleted scenes for sure. Do you want to get into our bolos?
Yeah, I have a just amazingly long list. This is one of these movies that has the level of detail everywhere and just things to watch for. I mean, we could probably go on for an hour.
All right, let's fire through them.
Yeah, let's rip it. I'm gonna go, and I bet this comes up later. I'm gonna go Bolo Pam Anderson.
Yeah,
sure. I mean, it's a great one. Hard to miss. Bolo Pam Anderson.
You have to be on the lookout, but it is surprising. Bolo, an opening dog bite.
One of the deleted scenes is an alternate opening scene. Which is great. It's more of an elongated opening. You still get the whole regular opening, but there's an additional opening scene. Which, teases back to some of the original cartoon opening scene. So definitely recommend checking that out. I'm going to say Bolo, some haunted sausage.
Bolo weed references.
And then I think as much as that was sort of the adult part of this, I'm going to go with maybe where they swung back to some kids reference. Bolo, an extended fart scene.
I wonder if that'll get drafted. Let's see. Bolo ascots.
Ooh, yep, classic. Right out of the cartoon.
Have you worn one before?
I have, but only in jest. I've never seriously worn an ascot, and I'd like to.
Okay. You'd like to seriously wear it?
Seriously, yes, because it's easy to wear an ascot in jest, but I'd like to seriously wear an ascot.
I would imagine most ascots are in jest. I can't imagine at this point.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That's too easy.
Yeah, that is too easy. You have to go somewhere, and that's what you're committing to.
Yes. I will stick right in there, and Bolo bell bottoms.
Yep. Bolo grandma.
And Bolo a sunburn.
Bolo fall colors in May.
I was surprised by that comment. It made me question everything.
Yeah, I had the same thing.
I'm going to say Bolo, another celebrity here, Bolo Mr. Bean.
Bolo, be on the listen out for Shaggy, singing about Shaggy, but not himself.
It's just the layers there are amazing. I'll go with another musical Bolo, Bolo Sugar Ray.
Oh, yeah. Great Bolo. Bolo being whipped.
And Bolo superhuman strength.
Oh, yep. Bolo, an unnecessary countdown from 5.
I'll go Bolo a concussion. It's never addressed, but it definitely happens.
It rarely was in 2002 addressed. Jacked up. Bolo peeing.
With another bodily function here. Bolo ear steam.
Oh, that's a good cartoon feature. Bolo going to do research on the net.
Love it. Love it. This is a nod to one of my all-time favorite movies, Bolo Hellraiser box.
Yeah, I thought of that right away when I saw that. It's like, it's right out of it.
It has to be intentional.
Bolo bad breath.
Yep. I will say Bolo eyes looking out of a painting. Classic move.
And I'll just piggyback more. Bolo all the Scooby Doo tropes that you enjoyed.
Oh, they're all there and they're fantastic. And then maybe a new one, but Bolo Melvin Dew.
Great one. Bolo. This might be my last one. Bolo interrupting a voodoo ritual.
All right, I could go on forever, but I will wrap it up here with Bolo, a banana split analogy gone wrong.
As they often do. All right, let's get to what drink to pair with this movie.
So I think I guess going probably off the beaten path here, but I'm gonna say just pair this with a joint or maybe a bong rip, ideally. Nice. I think that's really what this movie calls for. It's a great little mashup of like a kids movie and a stoner movie in a really hilarious way. Like they mask things that are clearly stoner references in ways that if you're 10 years old, you're not going to pick up on. But as an adult watching it, you get some good chuckles. That's what I'm going. If that's not your thing, I will say your second option is grab a few tiki drinks. Maybe some Mai Tais, whatever it is, something in a tiki glass, and that'll also you'll fit right in.
Well, yeah. If you're the type to do both together, you're going to have a blast during during this movie. It's pretty impressive how they weave in and out. You can see how it came down from an R to a PG movie with some of the references and how crafted they are, so that it would go over all the heads of the kids watching it, but the parents get it. Bong rip, that's good. I actually just Googled. I just started with I wanted, like you said, a tiki fun island drink, and I just Googled the movie and looked for cocktails of this one called the Scooby Snack Cocktail, and I just have the write up of what it is. It says Roque Raggy snack on this mystery machine colored creamy cocktail. In the picture is the color of the mystery machine van, it's clean and just perfect. Mr. Machine colored creamy cocktail with coconut rum, creme de banana, melon liquor, pineapple juice, and whipped cream.
Oh,
So if
wow.
you really want to have one of those nights where you're just like, I want my, like, a cocktail I would never usually make. I'm going to just make the night about, like, I watched Big Lebowski in college, and all we did was have the, Black Russians during the movie. It's one of those things where if you want to just get into the movie and have a movie that just is literally have a drink that's named after the movie because of how it looks and the vibe and everything else, then the Scooby Snack cocktail, very quick Google, just do Scooby Doo cocktail and you'll find the recipe.
That sounds, I mean, it's one of those drinks that I'm sure tastes amazing, but like as some of the best drinks do, you're like, you read the ingredients and you're sort of like, there's no way this is good, but I'm sure it comes together perfectly.
There's no way it's good if I make it, but if someone knows what they're doing, I'm sure
yes.
they can. I have, at this point, I think I'm at like 3 or 4 ingredients. After that, it's...
Yeah, right.
Yes,
it's
one of them.
And an ice cube is usually one of them.
Right, exactly. All right, we didn't expect this to be so fun because we had never watched it before, but we trusted our intern and hopefully you trust us, and this is a lot of fun. Enjoy.
Yeah, enjoy. And you know what? If you have the time and it's not that long of a movie, run through it twice and then come back to it.
That's our first time giving that advice, and I couldn't agree more.
Where have all the heroes gone? When the world needs a champion against the forces of darkness, who will answer the call?
I'll have whatever he's having.
From Warner Brothers Pictures, Scooby and his crew are back on the case.
Run! I'm trying, buddy.
And now, on an island of mystery,
Welcome to Spooky Island.
they have
Monster! A monster?
no clue.
We're here to solve a mystery.
Scooby-Doo! Where are you? Get up, get up, get up! Raggy! Scooby-Doo!
This year,
Who's your best buddy? Raggy. That's right. And who's my best buddy in the whole wide world? Ruby-Doo.
many heroes stand tall, but only one stands on all fours.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Scooby-Doo.
No one is stupid enough to believe that.
Who's the ugly old broad?
Slept on Cinema is brought to you by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know anyone who's struggling with shoe tying, Training Ties is the perfect solution. Or if you know anyone who just doesn't like tying their shoes, Training Ties keep shoes tied all day long. Say no to Velcro and yes to independence with Training Ties.
Welcome back. That was something else. That was amazing.
If it feels like it's a little bit outside of our normal movie viewing scope, that's because it was an intern's pick. So we have Kai here today, our awesome intern who picked this movie for us after posting at least one time on our Instagram account that we should hint, nudge, nudge, give this movie a try. The first time I watched it, I was like, I don't know, this is different from our usual style of movies that we've seen, basically. But by the second time, I was like, my son was getting into it, and it was a really good time.
Yeah, I'm the same exact way. The first time I was like, it was almost a little jarring because it is so far outside our comfort zone. But by just even the second time, I was like, man, I'm glad he picked this because this movie is awesome.
I feel like it grows on you, and that's probably why you even selected it.
Yeah, this movie is definitely a firm place in my heart. I rewatched it for this, and I was like, wow, this really was a self-indulgent pick. I really could see that. It's like, wow, I really hope that they're having a good time because whenever I rewatch it, I'm like, wow, I always forget what a good time it is being back in this movie.
Oh yeah, it's like you're in it too. It's you're really like immersed in it. Like takes you to another era. It takes you to another place. It's a whole world.
Yeah, I want to say more and add on to this, but I don't want to give up any of my draft picks. So why don't we get to...
Great. Well, let's just dive right in then.
Yeah, exactly. All right. As always, our guest goes first, and Kai is one of our esteemed guests. So Kai, you have the first pick in your movie choice. It's a big one. Apparently there's an obvious number one pick sitting there. I wonder if you're going to take it.
I have a really big list. I kept writing down potential picks, and I was just like, oh, it's so hard. But I would like to start off with just the aisle space on the plane on their way to Spooky Island.
So good.
I would love to ride on that plane.
Yeah, spooky air made me want to fly on an airplane, and flying on an airplane is one of the most miserable experiences on Earth, in my opinion, but that changed my mind, or would change my mind.
Yeah, I also liked on there, the aisle space was incredible, and there was just a stand-up functional bar going on in the airplane, too. I thought that was very nice.
And plants. There were a lot of plants. I've never seen a plant on a plane, and that I think they should carry that over into real life, because I think there's always that airplane smell, and it's always so dry. I think if they just had some plants, it could really go a long way.
We flew with my 1-year-old, Stan, to the Maldives, and that was, I think, a 42-hour flight time, across different planes. And we could have used some plants or some aisle space like this. That would have been very, very nice. Very jealous.
Seats also looked so comfortable.
So good. It last was it last episode or two before that we did Passion 57. We talked about how the airplane had missing seats.
Mm-hmm.
It's very nostalgic to look back at past airplane travel. You go to the 70s and all of a sudden people are in suits and it's just whiskey is free and people are smoking and making phone calls.
Yeah, and Scooby/Grandma was able to just go to another seat in the back of the plane here.
That's right. She just moved.
That's a great pick. I had that on my list as well. Just the whole spooky air thing was amazing. I also just love the idea of it's like you imagine that this plane only flies to Spooky Island, right? Like that's how many places are like that? That's just it's a great destination when there's a whole airline dedicated to getting you there.
And that's got to be even fun getting to the prior destination where everyone's waiting together, finally coming from all their respective places to get on the spooky plane to go to Spooky Island.
Oh yeah,
it sounds awesome. Well, I'm sure they really enjoyed the Big Isle. Let's see what was that your obvious number one pick?
That was not my obvious one. So I get, it was second pick. I was sweating a little bit. I'm glad I can still take this off the board. For me, it is Matthew Lillard and the Shaggy performance here.
Yep.
I was blown away. It literally was like he was born to play this role. I've said this to people since I watched this, and people thought I was insane. But I was like, no, go watch it. I think he should have been nominated for an Academy Award for this.
At least a blockbuster award.
Right? I mean, his performance was so spot on that it was almost better than the original, which is tough to do when you're replicating a beloved series. He was so good. It was like he just was Shaggy. It was absolutely, I thought all the characters did well, but he the voice, the appearance, the mannerisms,
the genuine love of food. I thought that came across.
Oh yeah, his genuine love of food, the genuine friendship he had with Scooby, and I think that's something that probably goes underappreciated. He did all of that work without an acting partner there. All that obviously was CGI afterwards, which is really tough to do. And so he had this absolutely amazing role and performance, and the added difficulty of most of the time having to do that by himself. His number one screen partner wasn't even there, which is amazing. And even so, afterwards, I think in 2010, he was so good at this that he now voices Shaggy in all the Scooby Doo series and other properties that they have. It's obviously a huge franchise. So he does all of that because they're just how could we possibly have anybody else do this? He's perfect.
Well, that's good because I think the prior person who had that role was doing it for the voiceover person was doing it for 70 something years, and every role that every reiteration of Scooby Doo, they would have him do the voiceover for all prior cartoons. But then he did the live one and then was able to take over the voiceovers. It's pretty cool. I couldn't agree. He was on my board as my first pick.
Yeah, he blew me away, and these are the roles that people in the establishment never get their due for something like this. No one ever takes movies like this seriously in ways that they should for things like this. But that was an unbelievable performance.
Well, you talked about this before. I don't know if we did it on one of the podcasts, but it's difficult picking. We talked about. It's difficult picking a comedy. So if you don't like someone's comedic style, you get really upset and you're like, "This is dumb" or whatever. So I remember when this movie came out, I didn't see it. I saw the trailers for it, and then probably sitting around other people, and they're like, looks stupid. He looks stupid. That's a guy from Scream, whatever. And then I didn't see it, but I can't believe it because he was so good. I loved him in Scream too, so I can't believe I didn't want to see this movie just because he had that iconic role. All right, my draft pick my first pick is the opening scene. That opening scene gave me everything from what maybe the movie didn't. Like, they had the breakup. I love all of that stuff. Like they had to have the arc. I get that, but I really like seeing them work as like the duo, the group that we grew up loving on the cartoons. Like, they all had their role. Daphne was already damsel in distress. Velma's coming up with a plan. Fred's doing his workout, and Shaggy and Scooby are in a barrel somewhere. Some weird floating. What was this? What ended up being his name?
Oh, I don't remember.
Whatever. It was like Mr. Withers or something.
Yeah,
Old
right.
Man Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Old man
Smith
something.
or Smither, whatever.
And it never is supernatural except
Right.
in this movie. It's always a man with a mask. So we got all of that in the first opening scene. It was just like it was just the perfect way to start the movie.
It was brilliant because it was obviously this is a tough thing to adapt for a movie, and the director clearly made a choice to take it a slightly different way than the series usually would have. But by having that opening scene with all this, the sort of nods to the classic Scooby Doo franchise and everything, like you said, that you want to see, he sort of puts that out there and is like, listen, I get it. I know what this is about. Here it is. But then I'm going to take my own spin on the whole thing. So it's not that I'm doing it unintentionally. It was like it made you feel like, okay, now this is a very intentional decision to do something else. And it was just an awesome visual scene. Like, that factory was so cool. Very vintage Scooby-Doo feel with conveyor belts and knives and stuff flying around. And it had that cartoonish feel, but in a way that was just really fun to watch.
Yeah, we got a cartoon episode in the first 8 minutes of this movie, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, then it bled right into that next scene where I don't know, the aftermath of that was probably only 3 or 4 minutes, but you sort of immediately got a feel for all the deeper backstory and interpersonal stuff between the characters that you didn't really get. Wasn't obvious from the show, but was obviously lurking behind everything. They just never dealt with it. But he was able to give you all the conflicts that the characters have in a matter of minutes right after that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Velma doesn't feel respected. Fred isn't quite sure whatever is going on. And Daphne's tired of being the damsel in distress. And we have Shaggy and Scooby just trying to keep the gang together. It's all just laid out in the first 10 minutes. My second pick, maybe this is like a hint as to what I liked about Scooby-Doo, and it's all like the good feelings and stuff, but I'm taking the Velma flashback. I liked that a lot. I like when she flashed back to I think she had a sip of the spiked root beer or whatever concoction that was, and then she started getting nostalgic and thinking about how the band used to be. And I love how it was all the same actors and actresses. It's not like it was aged that far back. It was just like a little while ago. He was the coolest guy in school, and she was the hottest and prettiest, and it was just a great gang. And I just thought that nostalgic flashback was awesome.
Yeah, I think they did some really smart things to give you context, all over the place. That's a great pick. I don't know what I'm going to do with my second pick here. I got a lot to choose from. I think I'm going to go with, and this carries for the movie and I guess just Scooby-Doo generally, because I'm obviously a huge Scooby-Doo fan. But the Scooby-Doo song, it is a banger, and especially the Shaggy version. And it is crazy. This is our second episode in a row with a Shaggy song, like a song by the musician Shaggy.
To lead it off and end it.
Yes, right. Are these the only two movies that start and end with a Shaggy song? It might be, and we happen to do
also like the idea of Shaggy sing about Shaggy that isn't Shaggy.
Right. But I mean, I love that idea that clearly someone must have been like, and let's have Shaggy sing the song. And everyone else just high-fived over it. And then someone called up Shaggy right then and made it happen. And it's just a great song. I mean, that's an all-timer.
Very catchy. Toasted some eggplant and chocolate and called up Shaggy.
Yeah.
That's a great pick. I'm very excited to hear Kai's next two picks here.
So, I was gonna say some things from the opening scene, but you snatched that.
Oh, I'd love to hear it though.
Actually, I will go with that one. I will say Pamela, the owner of the factory, driving through the wall with the mystery van for just no apparent reason.
Amazing.
No one questions it. No one goes like, oh my God, what was that happen? What, for what reason? It's just, she just drives through and it's like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you guys. You solved the mystery. And I just destroyed the wall of my own factory for no apparent reason. And all the reporters come in and the fans are there. And it's just like, I think she could have opened a door, but and who gave her the keys to their car?
So many questions.
Maybe she hired them because it is her factory and the guy is there because of her, because she denied him the date. I don't know. It's definitely a reach, but I love that too.
It was an amazing twist. And I think that's an awesome point that I loved how much there was no explanation. Like, why waste time with exposition? Of course, Pamela Anderson's here. Duh.
In 2002, Pamela Anderson, I think that Baywatch had ended in 2001. And she was off doing all of her other stuff and seemed to always be like she was in Borat just years later, right?
Yeah.
It was such a thing back then.
I'd forgotten that part of the movie. Like, it's such a one-off moment. I was completely unexpected, even though I've seen this movie so many times. It always comes in unexpected, and you think that it's going to be some dark, mysterious thing happening, but it's just, hello, model steps out of the mystery van.
It's also great about, like, I think a lot of what they did in that first scene in the movie is what we appreciate on this. Like, they're just kind of like, all right, we're not going to spend time haggling over why was she there? What's going on? There's a plot hole here. We don't do any of that. We skip by it and we look for what's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And now we're going to have to somehow get deeper here for these are sleeper picks for Kai's third pick.
That's a hard part. I'm torn between two things real bad.
We can always give honorable mentions. So if there's something you didn't want to get out, we'll do that at the end.
All right. I'm going to have an honorable mention for this, but I think my sleeper pick's going to have to be the actual supernatural happenings. And they do the whole thing at the end of the movie where they go, and this you see, it was not a ghost. It was Scrappy Doo causing trouble. And I'm like, okay, but like, he stole the spirits out of your bodies. And like, there were monsters that were destroyed by the sun, and we're just not going to address that there was actually a supernatural happening, or how Scrappy Doo obtained supernatural powers through this pyramid-shaped object. Nope, just it was not a ghost, guys. We're going to completely blow over the last hour of supernatural happenings. It's never supernatural. Ghosts aren't real.
That's so true. Like, so much of Scooby Doo in the gang and the Mr. Ink was about telling everyone it's nothing. It's supernatural. This is not. It's always a person with a mask, and we got supernatural in this movie. And you're right. By the end, they're just like, we're gonna pin this on Scrappy.
Right, and you have that early scene where Velma's like trying to rip off the mask of the monster, and it's just not happening. And you're like, oh, guess we're taking a left turn here.
There were also a number of the negative reviews from the critics were talking about that. Like, they took what Scooby-Doo stood for and how it's all about practicality and rationale and not just saying it's a ghost. And they, completely disregarded that and actually allowed supernatural to exist within the movie and within the universe. So that was definitely strange for a lot of the reviewers.
And again, that's what was so smart about that opening scene, because they acknowledged it and then were able to move on.
Yep.
All right, my sleeper pick, and maybe this is bordering on not being a sleeper, but it's our show. We can do what we want here.
What we want.
I'm gonna take just the fact that Scrappy Doo was the villain, and I feel like this was kind of a nod to OG Scooby Doo fans, because Scrappy sucks. Scrappy was just always this add-on. It was like, why is he here? He didn't fit in, and so the fact that they just made him the villain, I thought was amazing.
I agree. So many people didn't like the Scrappy, and it was like adding Seven to Married with Children back in the day.
Exactly.
It's just like, it was legitimately. I read up on it, and it was specifically to save the ratings from the show, and that's what they would do. You'd come up with a new character and be like, "Oh yeah, this will save us," right? But I mean, it doesn't. And most people who are already into the show then hate the character for even being involved. But it's so great how they flipped that, because all the older fans are like, "Yes, he is the villain. He ruined my time watching the show."
Yep. It was brilliant. I thought it was just so smart. Like when that robot opened up and he was sitting inside, it was just awesome.
Did you know It was going to be him in there.
I didn't. I probably should have.
Chekhov's Scrappy.
Right.
Flashback.
I mean, I should have. Right. Like he had that little flashbacky scene where he's being a just total, super annoying. I should have seen it coming, but
I was being such a movie nudge with my wife watching it. I'm like, that's Scrappy in there. It's got to be. Like, why didn't we just put him in here for one scene?
Yep.
You get like John Travolta in the first 2 minutes of the movie. Like, well, he's not going to just. This isn't a cameo role or whatever it is. Like, he's going to be a big part of this movie.
The movie does such a good job at foreshadowing. Like they do not waste anything.
No.
Like you get a taste of everything right before it's coming. And I think that's one of the really, really amazing things they did with the movie is that everything, like they give you all the clues to everything.
Absolutely. I love the so much of that stuff with Daphne. She's like, no, guys, I really have a black belt. All right. I'm like, we're going to get the scene, right? Give us the scene where she fights, and she fights the massive wrestler and destroys him in his own game of wrestling. I thought that was awesome. Yeah, but it's, like you said, Kai, it's all just a great setup, and there's a reason for why they do things leading up to it. All right. Well, luckily we have an honorable mention or two after this, so I don't have too much pressure on me here. I loved watching how the other actors, especially like the background actors, reacted to the CGI stuff with Scooby and the monsters. So I couldn't, in my second watch, I just spent the entire time watching the actors and everyone else reacting to like things getting knocked down. As you know, it must have been really strange in 2002 to be like, all right, act like Scooby knocked over that pizza and the plates and that person, or like act like Scooby just ran into you, or the monsters were scaring you. You just have 30 people in a room kind of looking in different directions. Not quite sure. Or like the car ride with Scrappy, and like they're all like looking at him all frustrated, being like, come on. But they're not quite at the same in unison. I just love that. And it's such a like an early era CGI stuff where part of their things people don't like about this movie is all the CGI stuff and how Scooby looked or whatever. But I don't care about that. I cared about how other people reacted to something not being there.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a skill that this was kind of early in the days of like movies that had this much CGI in them. And people just, I'm sure, especially like sort of extra type people, background actors or whatever, they just didn't have experience. I'm sure it's really, really tough to do.
Which makes what Matt Lillard did, the first overall pick, even more impressive.
Right. That blew my mind.
All right, honorable mentions. What do we got?
I'm going to toss out there just the sets.
Yeah.
Like I thought all the set design was just so good. And I also just, it was a brilliant move to have it at a theme park because it allowed you to have these sort of cartoonish sets that look like, an old scary haunted mansion or like all these other crazy cursed things, but without forcing it into something. Like you could have these ridiculous sets because that's what rides look like, right? They're supposed to be like that. So I thought the sets, all the crazy like food and all the way everything was decorated was amazing and really brought you back to that cartoon feeling, but in a way that didn't feel forced or I don't know, dumb.
I thought that was an awesome, like, overall lampshade, not a line lampshade, but a stylistic lampshade to put this in an amusement park because it's so colorful, like the purples and the reds and the blues, like it's so synonymous with each character in the show itself, in the van. So it was so, by putting it in an amusement park and everyone knows it's an amusement park, no one has to be like, oh, that's hokey or whatever. Like, you're in an amusement park. These colors would be there. So I love that thing.
I got the Melvin Dew.
Oh, so good.
I love, like, is there Mr. Dew here? Melvin Dew? And the fact that that's not his only appearance. Like, he returns. Melvin Dew is an important guy.
Are you sure it's not the other dude?
I laughed out loud at that scene. I thought that for whatever reason that just like hit me in just the right spot.
I think it tickled me because I thought it was a throwaway line, but this also goes back to what Kai said before: is they bring stuff back. Like they didn't just have a one-off with the other dude. He came back around for one more comment.
Yep. Yeah, I loved that. I thought that was so good.
I guess my honorable mention would be I love the casting in this. I just thought they nailed it. Mm-hmm. They nailed the era. This could have. It's so funny when it first came on because I hadn't seen this. I was like, this is like the same cast from if you just took a bunch of horror movies in high school from around that time, from like the last 5 years. These are all the same people that were in those movies, and it was just fun seeing them in this Scooby Doo movie. And it's just like Sarah Michelle Gellar. Yup, that makes perfect sense. I didn't know who the Velma character was, but now she's been a huge actress in our lives in the past 20 years. Freddie Prinze Jr., perfect. Fred. I just thought, and of course we talked about Matt Lewin. I just thought the casting was incredible.
Yeah, I had that next up on my list. So I thought the casting on this was absolutely perfect. It's hard to take a beloved series where people are of such familiarity with characters, especially that are animated, and it was like they just walked right out of that cartoon. I mean, it was uncanny how well they did with the casting, with the costumes, with everything. And it was also just a fun cast. You could tell they were having a good time with this.
Yeah. And two of them got married after this.
And still are.
And still are, right, exactly. All right, let's finish this off here with a quick question here. What's everyone's favorite character from the show? Favorite character from the show and favorite character in this movie?
Easy for me, it's Shaggy both ways.
Shaggy both ways?
Yeah. I'm the same. It's that's super, super easy. Sure, he's not the bravest. Sure, he's not the smartest, but he's just always there. He's always there for you. He's always like sticking up for his friends, sticking up for the group. And he ends up always being in the right place at the right time. Like, I feel like he's the glue that holds the crew together.
Yeah, that's good. Velma was mine from the show. I like Velma, and I thought I was going to pick her, and she's still my second favorite in this, but it's Shaggy.
I gotta say, I feel like throughout all the different iterations of Scooby Doo, all the different animated series, whatever, Shaggy is like the one constant. You know, like everyone changes up a bit between the series, but like Shaggy's just a friend, and he's just always there. And even in the movie, he's the friend. He's always there. He's reliable. He might not be the smartest, he might not be the bravest, but I think he's the most reliable. Even I think it's better that like he and Scooby are like always scared and they still go into things anyways. Of course, a lot of times they are bribed into it, but they still do it, and I think they deserve credit for that.
That's a great point. All right, that was awesome. I never would have seen this movie if you didn't bring it up. What was the last movie we did that you picked? That was awesome.
That was
Jennifer's Body.
Jennifer's Body.
Oh, Jennifer's Body.
Also awesome.
Yeah, 2 for 2 here. This is so good. All right, thanks a lot for picking this and joining us, Guy.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
One of our best drafts ever. I'm just going to throw that out there.
So much fun. We had less picks than usual, or about the same. What is it?
I don't know how the math works out, but whatever it was, great draft.
It was a ton of fun, and I enjoyed every moment of it. Let's get to our next topic. Superlative. What's our superlative for this movie?
Superlative this week is, it's maybe a little hard to describe, but favorite sign that we're in the early 2000s.
I love how we phrase it favorite, because we did favorite instead of best because we wanted to stay away from arguments, but I'm so happy to choose favorite on this one because there's so many good ones. I don't want it to be like a discussion about what's better, but more of a list of what's great.
It's a fun movie to do this because I think we talk about movies that often are either sort of timeless or very much in a time.
Yeah.
And in some ways, this movie's a little of both.
Yep.
Like it's very much early 2000s. You put this on, you know exactly what era it is. But there's also a timeless quality because it has this sort of throwback to the cartoon of the spooky mansion, which is timeless, and like all that kind of stuff. So you get a little whiff of timelessness, but I think on the big picture, it is very much early 2000s.
It's such a great way to put that because it's almost like this crew is like traveling to the future to a group that they don't quite understand, which is like these 2002 college kids. They don't quite get the language. They're still saying like jinkies and zoinks and like yeah. They're not of the, even though they're the same age, they're not really of that generation. So that's where you get that sense of like, yeah, you look at everyone else on the island, it is 2002 and how they talk and how they dress and everything. But that crew is what makes it timeless.
I described this as favorite thing that's clear that, the favorite sign that we're in the early 2000s. What are your thoughts about people who say aughts, like the early aughts?
I don't. They've been slowly eliminated from my life. I don't have anyone in my circle at this point that say that.
It's weird to me. It feels like a bit of like revisionist language history. Like we were alive then. I don't remember anyone ever describing it as like, hey, we're in the aughts.
No,
like, that was never a thing. And yet now people look back at it and describe it that way, it feels very forced in a weird, like kind of snooty way.
I think it usually comes off snooty.
Oh yeah, it's when I hear that, I instantly am like, this person is an ass.
Yeah. They're gonna now at that point the clock just starts running in my head for the next snooty thing they're about to say, and they're already a bad person in my mind and they could be great, and I've already written them off.
Yep, it's dangerous.
Yeah. My superlative or favorite is Sugar Ray.
Yeah.
When Sugar Ray came on, the first time I watched this with my wife, she goes, "Ugh, of course Sugar Ray is in this." Yes, without the scoff and the judgment, of course Sugar Ray is in this. That is the time. That is all the music that is being played. Every song could have been a Sugar Ray song, it seemed like, that was played during this movie. So, of course, Sugar Ray.
I had that on my list. I was debating between that and one other thing, which I'll get to. But I think that's a great pick because it was so that sound, that super pop sound, but like that's trying to have an edge in a weird way.
Like, it's a pop singer that spikes their hair. Like,
yeah, exactly. And it's also like this, like MTV was so culturally important at the time, and this looks like it could have been like an MTV, and I'm sure they're going for this look, this sort of like MTV Spring Break. You know, they had those concerts with everyone dancing and doing whatever. Like I'm sure Sugar Ray played at that, you know, every year for a decade, and it had that feeling, and it really just puts you in that place. It was such a detail that was totally unnecessary, but absolutely perfect.
It's just like the Pam Anderson thing. It's like totally unnecessary, but absolutely necessary.
Yep. That's a great choice. I think so. I was debating between either Sugar Ray or just the early 2000s cast generally. I think the cast, especially Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar, like they were the couple duo, whatever it is. You know, this is obviously not their first movie together. They clearly have a lot of chemistry. They ended up getting married shortly after this movie came out. They are still married, as we talked about. And then you throw Matthew Lillard in there, who's also, I mean, Scream was obviously in the 90s, but he was everywhere when this came out. He was a personality, and that cast,
and I thought
the whole thing.
I thought Linda Cardellini, who played Velma, who still is like in making Marvel movies to this day, like this was an early start for her, but she was phenomenal, I thought, as Velma.
The other things I had, Pam Anderson, as we mentioned, I thought the sort of cool speak that people had was very of that era. And then the CGI and the reactions to it also puts it squarely in this era.
I guess the music in general puts it in this era too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good list. All right, one change to be a blockbuster, which it absolutely was. So what do we do? It
absolutely was. So this is, I think, another one of these. You know, what could have put this into the stratosphere? Like, what makes this, you know, a $500 million movie?
Right.
And I think probably what I'm going to say is something that came up in a lot of the critics' commentary and things that you saw, and probably a lot of the people were harping on the sort of like the Scooby Doo purists, if you will. You ditch the supernatural element, because I think, you know, there were a few Scooby Doo sort of special episodes where they toss in some actual supernatural things, you know, Halloween special, I don't know, things like that. But, you know, the whole thing with Scooby Doo was that it always seems like it's going to be a ghost or some other supernatural thing, and then it ends up being something totally explainable. And they did, as we talked about, they did a really, you know, smart way of acknowledging that history and then electing to move in a different direction. But I think some people were still just so tied in to what that original source material was that they just weren't ready to move on. And I get that. It's been on since the 60s. So people have a long history with this, and that's a tough thing to do. So I think, I'm not sure it necessarily would have been a better movie, but if we're just talking about what makes this more of a blockbuster, I think you capture probably a greater portion of the audience with that change.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Mine, I guess, can piggyback a little bit on that, but I think maybe I liked what Kai said, because it kind of shows that this movie wasn't really for the critics because what is the age range that's watching it? It's like an 8-year-old boy and their parents or something, right? Like that's
right.
the realm we're in. So they're not going to catch the CGI. They're not going to really care about it. But other people who would avoid this movie and not give it a chance might see some of that stuff and be like, that doesn't look good. So I'm going to go with like the monsters. The monsters were just like, they weren't scary. They weren't funny. They weren't, I don't know. They weren't what I had wanted. And they were also going against sort of the ethos of Scooby Doo, which is that there's a rational explanation behind this. And like I said, they got to it eventually, but it involved the supernatural, which it seemed like it didn't need to.
Yep.
But it also, I'm not sure it would have made a better movie either. Like I enjoyed it. So only for like the hardcore fans to appease them.
And it's interesting, neither of us touched on like the CGI itself, because I think probably, my wife walked in at some point while I was watching this. She was like, "Oh my God, they're like CGI," and I was like, "I think this is great. I think
so
like
too.
It's coming from a cartoon. What are really the alternatives? I mean, obviously having an act like a practical, like a puppet thing, which they had originally were considering. They had a Jim Henson Company puppet, like a real animatronic dog was going to be in it, but they scrapped that in favor of CGI. And I think, I'm always a favor of the practical effects and animatronic things. So I think that would have also been totally fine. But like if you went for more, like if it came out today, this probably looks like it's like hyper realistic. And that's not right.
No.
That's totally the wrong feel for this.
It's okay that it's so.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like, even if I made this today with all of today's technology, I would want Scooby looking pretty much like he looked in this.
I agree. And they didn't stretch it too far. He pretty much stayed a dog. There was obviously the grandma scene. But it's so cool, the stuff they could do with him, the freedom they had to use any like blowing out the fire on his tail or like inching along on his fingertips next to the suitcase, like all that stuff, which is part of what made the cartoon fun was cartoon Scooby, not real life limitation Scooby. We want to see him doing zoinks and like getting like thrown into Velma's arms and like just stuff that wouldn't happen. So I think he needed to be fake, and they did a really admirable job with this. It didn't bother me at all. And as always, once you buy in, you're not bothered by it anymore. So I bought in as most people did.
This is the perfect example. Yeah. Perfect example of a movie where you go into that mindset, you're going to have a great time.
But if every little thing he does bothers you because it doesn't look real or whatever else, or that like, Jurassic Park had better effects a decade before or whatever. It's like then you're wrong person, wrong movie.
You're missing the point here, guy.
Exactly. Just enjoy the goofy stuff that Scooby can do, as most people did who are listening to this. But let's get to I'm going to do my spin-off idea first because I only have one and I got nothing else. Let's see the 2 years of Shaggy and Scooby hanging out by the beach or whatever else adventures they got into. They're not they were off the grid. For when that number came up, I thought it was going to say like 8 weeks or 3 months or something like that. But like Velma's already working at NASA and Fred's just like on the book tour, and who knows what Daphne does to make her money. But 2 years of Shaggy and Scooby just by the beach and little adventures and getting into it's like kung fu adventures, making the way across the country I just want to see what they're doing for 2 years. They're in a great mood. Things haven't gone.
They're in a great mood. They both look great at the end of it. The van looks great. Like you could easily see a situation where they have sort of like a hoarder van after 2 years, but it's decked out. They got the little hibachi grill going. They got all sorts of stuff
on their own. Yeah,
that's a great pick. I think I would love to see that. I would also love and to just be a part of that. Like I would love to be like, I don't know, they come hang out and you sort of cross paths and like you're like best friends with them for like 2 weeks. That would be amazing.
It's I just started watching Poker Face on Peacock, and it's kind of like that. Like each episode is watching people get friends, whatever, and then move along. Like I said, like kung fu, like you get into adventures and then you move on down the road. And I feel like that's what they were doing for 2 years. And it's going to be a completely different movie. It's not like, they're going to be detectives and solve problems and whatever. It's just going to be them living their life, getting the way across the country, and all the adventures they get into along the way.
Yeah. Make it a series. Give me a ton of that. Make them travel across the United States.
Yeah, they have too much. They get toasted too much one night and then want to go from one body of water to the other, and they have a whole plan to get there to the other one. Perfect.
I love that. I think that's great, and I feel like we'd get to see a lot more about what makes Scooby and Shaggy.
Yeah, there's some moments, when they get really deep with each other. There's a reason why there's a strong connection here for sure. They've helped each other out at some jams that weren't just Mystery Inc. Related.
That's a great choice. That's far better than what I have. But what I have, and I think this might even be possible. I don't know how to exactly. I don't know who I need to talk to, whose palms I need to grease, but I want to see the R-rated version. I want to see the original idea for this. And I totally get, I'm sure if it was R-rated, they would not have made $200 whatever million, right? I'm sure from a dollars and cents perspective, that was the right choice. But I really want to see it. I bet that movie is fantastic.
I couldn't agree more.
What it made me think of, and this is the perfect movie to do this, why don't they make two versions of movies all the time? You just have to, you could use a lot of the same footage. You just kind of record, I don't know, an extra half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is. So you could film two movies at once. One's the PG one for kids, and then you have the R-rated one for the parents. And I'm thinking back to the DVD days where you ever get one of those like DVDs that was like two-sided, and there's like one movie on one side, another movie on the other side. What if you just had that? You're like, okay, I got a great movie for my kids to watch. Then the kids go to bed, and parents get to watch the R-rated version.
All the characters have sex with each other.
Yeah, all sorts of crazy shit happens. You already have the whole cast there. You just got to film a little bit more, and you're getting two movies out of it. Like, it blows my mind that this isn't a thing. It's
so funny because you think of like Eastbound and Down, where they have all like in all the Will Ferrell movies where they just kind of like riff for like 20, 30 minutes and say their jokes. Sprinkle in some G-rated comedy here, right? And then you can also have the R-rated. And then, like you said, this is such a, you came up with another great idea a couple episodes ago that just like, it was making action movies into plays, revolutionizing the theater industry. And I think this should like, hey, do you want to watch Alice in Wonderland? Yes. Well, I'll watch it with you first, but then me and my wife are going to watch it afterwards. And it's like two completely somehow different versions, but they're both the same movie.
Yeah. You're not going to be able to do this with every movie, obviously. People in Hollywood are creative. I'm sure there are ways to do this with a lot of films.
I would also like to go backwards on like a really like R-rated movie and make that into a G. And like, oh yeah, did you watch? Hey, did you see Die Hard? I've seen Die Hard. Yeah, it was really fun. You didn't actually see the real Die Hard.
Right. Take it both ways. I think you could end up with some really fascinating things.
That's got to break my brain. I think that's a good place to finish this year. Do we know what movie we're doing next?
Next week, we are getting into a unbelievably successful franchise, one of my favorite franchises of all time. I'm shocked that any movie in this franchise qualifies, but we are doing Too Fast, Too Furious.
I can't believe we get to do this. This is so exciting. This was one of my favorite Fast and Furiouses, and it was early on, but when things were still kind of real that were happening in the movie. Great Eva Mendes, Paul Walker, who's it? Tyrese is in this as well. Yeah, I can't wait to get into this.
I don't know what you mean by still real, because they're all real.
They're all real.
Confused by that statement, but it is more about cars. I will say that.
Yeah, it's awesome. They're all great and they're all real, but this seemed a little bit less movie real.
Yeah,
but
they definitely took a hard left. I don't know, right around Fast Five.
Yes,
but Fast Five is one of the greatest movies of all time. So
I'm glad they took that left, but I'm also glad they made this movie too, because this one's my favorite of all.
I cannot wait. I recently went through all of them again to get ready for the new movie coming out soon. But it's been a while since I saw Too Fast, Too Furious, so I can't wait to get into this again.
Oh, this is going to be awesome. All right, we'll see you next time. This was a ton of fun. Later.